Hello, this is social media attorney Mark Fiedholz, and welcome to my short podcast on what you must know about the new federal standards regulating social media policies and employee training. In this podcast, I would like to address three frequent questions I'm often asked regarding the new federal standards regulating the development of social media policies and employee training. The first question is, why haven't we heard about the new federal standards from our in-house attorney or at conferences? Unfortunately, most busy in-house attorneys and conference speakers are not 33-year digital media law specialists and have not trained over 100,000 professionals like myself. It's unreasonable to expect your in-house attorney or most conference speakers to have my expertise in social media law. Out of over 3,000 professionals who took my basic social media law pretest in the past few years and told me they had previous social media law training and didn't really need my online course, the average pretest score was 13%. Not one test taker knew the three basic elements of social media defamation. The second question is, what is the legal authority that underpins the new federal standards regulating social media policies and employee training? The legal authority driving the new federal standards are found in recent U.S. Supreme Court and federal court decisions that classify employee usage of social media as a high-risk activity that can permanently destroy a person's reputation worldwide. Social media has now become one of the biggest sources of severe and pervasive harassment, libel, civil rights violations, copyright infringement, and permanent reputational injury. Considering the risks, courts reject telling employees to read their boilerplate social media policy and giving them verbal warnings as adequate training to enforce your policy. In the public sector, most social media cases are filed in federal court under the Federal Civil Rights Statute 42 USC 1983, and that USC stands for United States Code. In the private sector, most social media cases are filed as retaliation claims with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. There has been an uptick in social media harassment, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and other related claims. The third and final question is, what are the three biggest mistakes organizations make regarding compliance with the new federal standards regulating social media policies and employee training? The first mistake is improperly risking social media as predominantly a public relations or marketing issue. Failure to risk social media as a high liability issue results in using defective model social media policies and using verbal warnings to employees instead of expert social media liability training that is now required by the new federal standards. Decision makers are personally liable for firing or disciplining an employee without proof that the employee received a policy and employee training that complies with these new federal standards. I always tell decision makers, don't tell your employees to apply common sense to their social media speech. Tell them to apply common law to their social media speech. The second mistake is placing blind trust on model social media policies just because they come from a reputable organization. Out of over 100 social media policies I recently updated that originated from national associations and reputable policy services, not one policy included the new federal policy language, especially regarding personal use of social media. So, most of these boilerplate policies are written by attorneys who don't specialize in social media law. Also, most policies only include minimum state or general standards, not the federal standards. Since most social media cases are litigated in federal court, the omission of federal standards will invalidate the social media policy and leave you vulnerable to paying out big legal damages. The third mistake is failing to reinforce your social media policy with outside expert social media liability training by an instructor who qualifies in court as a social media attorney expert. Social media policies and employee training involve complex constitutional and other legal issues. You should never ask an attorney who isn't a specialist in social media law or a non-attorney to write your social media policy or train your employees. This recommendation is especially important now that new federal standards regulate the development of social media policies and employee training. Well, we've come to the end of this podcast. I appreciate your time. Hope you found this information instructive and compelling as to why you need an experienced social media attorney specialist like myself to update your social media policy and train your employees. If you're interested in my affordable online course to train all your personnel and expert social media policy drafting programs, you can email me or call me. The contact information and my websites are located on the email that I sent you. Again, thank you for your time. This is the end of the podcast.